So you start getting letters, scholarship letters. You start putting them up in your room.
Yeah.
And then it's decision time.
Yeah.
Which were the two top schools that you were thinking of?
Well, all the USC people who are watching this are going to be extremely disappointed. But my two main choices in high school were Notre Dame and USC. But I obviously chose USC.
Right.
Which, that might bring me back into good graces with all the USC Trojans.
Why USC? What made you say SC's the place?
Well, one, the reason why I chose USC because it was close to home. It's an hour flight. So my mom, I'm a mama's boy. And so for her to be able to come to like any of the games or be able to hop on the plane and just be an hour away, it was really comforting for me. And then also it was, this is LA. Came here on a recruiting trip and you're 20 minutes away from the beach, 2 hours away from San Diego. You got Malibu, you got Hollywood. I'm from a super small town, like movie stars, celebrities, the clubs, like it just seemed like I was sold. So I made my decision, and I remember my high school coach told me before I made my decision, he said, Thomas, before you make your decision, go to a place that you can see yourself being even when it's not football season.
Right.
And so, of course, I was like, you look at this place. I was like, I'm here. It's the middle of November right now. And, it's 80 degrees. So I was like, it's a no-brainer. If I can wear flip-flops, tank top in the winter, then I'm there. So came to USC.
And that was your coach, Pete Carroll?
My high school coach.
Oh, your high school coach.
My high school coach.
Okay, cool.
Yep.
So now you pick USC, you're here in LA.
Yeah.
How was your transition from college football to NFL? So you get drafted 2008 by the Jaguars.
Yeah.
How was that when you get that call? This is all the work that you've been putting in.
Yeah.
You get a phone call, you get drafted 2008.
Man, there's so much that went into that moment.
Right.
It was, for the first time in my life, I think I experienced all emotions at one time. And what I mean by that, it was doubt, but doubt in the sense of, I did something that I didn't even believe I could do. It was excitement of, wow, I did exactly what I always wanted to do. It was fear because here I was from California and I was going to be living in Florida all by myself. It was angst because now I'm going to be playing with some of the best athletes in the entire world. Am I good enough? And it was also a letdown because at the moment I got drafted, I remember the phone picked up, the Jaguars general manager, head coach, owner. They said, Thomas, welcome to Jacksonville. You ready to be a Jaguar? I said, yes. We talked a little bit longer, hung up the phone, and my family was excited. But at the same time, I was unfulfilled.
Why?
See, the unfulfillment comes when we've reached that place that we've always wanted to get to, and then the excitement or the thrill or the unknown doesn't really exist anymore. Because I was chasing it for so long and I didn't know it was going to happen, like I was constantly driven by something. I had motivation, I had inspiration on getting there. Now I'm finally there, and it was like, it was like life went on, right? There was still nothing to pursue, and so it was really difficult. It was a really, really big letdown. And I've talked to a lot of people who have had cancer, and they talk about when they get that phone call where they're in remission, or they get that checkout that they're in remission, and then they call family or close friends who've been there supporting them the entire time, and they no longer get that support or that attention or recognition because everybody's like, oh, you're good now.
But wouldn't it be more of that maybe energy from family or friends? Because now it's not just college. Now we're talking about NFL. Like, everybody likes football, I feel like.
No, you're right. Everybody does. But for me, it was almost like the football didn't even matter. It was the pursuit of getting there.
Right.
And that was over. Like the chase was over. Sometimes when, let's say you're dating somebody, right? And you're like, oh my gosh, he's dreamy, right? Or she's so fine, I gotta get with her. And then all of a sudden she says yes, or he says yes. And you're like, oh.
Oh, that's terrible.
Right? That's it.
That's awful.
Well,
especially if I'm trying to be with them and
right.
I've been after them for so long.
But then you're like, oh, that's all it is?
Really?
Yeah, that's what I
Oh,
felt.
wow. So now what's your biggest challenge? Okay, so now you're NFL.
Yeah.
What's your biggest challenge? What's a story that you can share with us that you're like, I haven't even shared this. This is like, this was the biggest challenge through my NFL career that I didn't even know what was going to happen.
Yeah, nobody knows this one.
And nobody knows.
Nobody knows this one. It was after my first year in the NFL, so going on year 2. It was in the springtime. So in the springtime, you have off-season workouts. And I was in Florida, and I had just left the practice facility. And like I was talking about before, that thrill of getting there and being there, that thrill, like, it left me. And I went home to my apartment where I lived by myself, and I just prayed to God. And I was like, God, what happened to the times when this was so much fun? And what happened to the chase of it? What happened to the pursuit where I was so excited to not even know if this was going to happen? And I said, let it be fun again. Which leads me to my next part of be careful what you wish for. Because as soon as I said that, I felt the shift from the coaches, the players in Jacksonville. They started to bring in new players, and after that training camp in my second year, I was the one who got waived or released or kicked off the team, for the better term. And by kicked off, I don't mean because I did anything wrong. It was just they liked somebody else. I wasn't getting it done, and so we parted ways. And for the next year and a half, I spent my life in a suitcase. And by that, I traveled to different teams. So then I went to the Seattle Seahawks. When I went to the Seattle Seahawks, I was there for 5 weeks. And I got all my stuff packed up with me, and I'm just toting it back. I got 3 suitcases running through the airport.
Right.
I go to practice for 5 weeks. Then their general manager says, hey, look, we're going to go separate ways. Then I go home. I live on my mom's couch. She had moved up to Sacramento area, so I'm living on her couch, and I'm 24 years old at the time. This NFL football player living on my mom's couch.
Right.
I have to wake up every day on my own, and I got to go train and work out on my own, and so that internal motivation started to kick in. Then I'd get a call from the Houston Texans, and so I'd have to pack all my stuff and get to the airport in an hour and fly to Houston just for them to say, hey, you didn't make it. And then I get back on a plane and I fly back to California. I live on my mom's couch for 2 or 3 more weeks. And every single Sunday when you watch football, and I know this might sound really bad, but you kind of hope another player gets hurt so that you have an opportunity to go to that team. And so then I'd get on another plane and I'd go to New England. And I stayed in New England for about a year and a half.
Through that period, when you're going from one team, they say no, you go to another one, they say no. What are you thinking at that point? Do you think it's over at that point? Or, I mean, you want it to be fun, and that's obviously not fun, opposite from it.
Right.
How did that make you feel?
You question yourself.
Right.
You doubt yourself. There were so many times when I was thinking that if it's this hard, this must not be for me. Because I had a lot of friends who I went to college with. You know, you're in the locker room with these guys and they're the #1 pick overall or the first-round draft picks, or they're excelling and succeeding in the NFL at an ultimate high level. And for me, I was thinking like, this isn't for me. There must be something else that I'm supposed to do, because it can't be this hard, it can't be this difficult if this is what I'm supposed to be doing.
Right.
And so there was a lot of dark nights and dark times.
How would you do, like, what would you do to, like, even have a good day if it was so dark? Like, where was the light at during that time?
The light was just the hope. The light was just the hope of having, like, if somebody was going to call that day and say, hey, we want you to come play on our team. And so there's hope. That's all it is. It's just that you have faith that it's going to happen. And if it doesn't happen today, it's going to happen tomorrow. And if it doesn't happen tomorrow, then that means that we're one day closer to it eventually happening.
But were you still working out during that
still
time, or were
working
you
out.
still putting work in?
Yeah, I'm still working out. And some of the hardest times that I had was having to work out when I was not told, forced, or wasn't mandatory for me to do.
Who was your like biggest inspiration through that time?
I would say my biggest motivator during that time was my dad.
But he was absent.
Yeah, he was absent.
So how did that come now into play at this time?
So me and my dad's relationship kind of formed on its own when I went to college at USC, because this wasn't the first time that I had faced any type of athletic adversity.
Right.
And so I would call my dad because at that time he'd become a pastor and a minister of his own church. And so he would always give me some type of motivational scripture, inspirational scripture.
Right.
And he would always say, the race is not given to the swift or to the strong, but to the one who endures to the end.
Ooh.
And so when he would say that, it would always challenge me to not quit or not give up. And because it would have been so easy for me to give up at that time, because anybody would give up, right? You're not seeing any of the fruits of your labor, but at the same time.
But you got a taste of it,
Yeah.
which was good.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, but it's almost like somebody gives you a piece of candy during Halloween, but says, no, you can't have the rest of your bag of trick-or-treat candy. It's like it's so close, but yet so far.
Right. So throughout this history that you're going through, what was like a song that you went to that you're like, oh, every time even now today, I can hear this song and it takes me back to that place from sleeping in your mom's couch. You know, you played NFL, but you're back at your mom's house. Now your dad's being your motivation to keep going, inspiration. What song, when you hear it, it takes you back to all that dark area, like trying to get back on a team?
There's a song by Marvin Sapp, and it's called Never Would Have Made It. And it goes, never would have made it without you. And it's a gospel song.
Right.
But that song is so important to me because since I was a kid, and I'm 30 years old now, the whole entire time that I've been working and striving to accomplish all of my goals, my mom's been my motivation. And so for that song represents like, I never would have made it without you.
Oh, that's beautiful.
And so for my mom, because my mom used to clean houses when I was younger. And so I would see my mom every single day, who would wake up and not have a complaint ever. But she would find something inside of her that would allow her to keep cleaning these giant houses by herself.
Right.
And I remember asking her one day, like, Mom, why don't you quit? Why don't you take a day off? And she says, I can't take a day off, because if I take a day off, we won't have anything to eat. We won't have anywhere to live. And I have to show you better than I tell you how to live your life. And so for me, like, I never would have made it if it hadn't been for her.
That's powerful. That's beautiful. So then you're playing, you get back on a team, New England, you said?
Yeah.
That's where your injury happened? This is 2011?
So I went from New England, then stayed there for a little while, got cut. I went to Buffalo for like a couple weeks, got cut, and then I went to the Carolina Panthers, that's where my career ended.
So 2011, you get a neck injury,
Yeah.
season's done. You go back, you play again. Here's 2012.
Yeah.
It happens again.
Yeah.
And your career, and that you had to stop. You had to stop playing football. What was your first thought at that point?
Well, how it happened was we were in practice, and I felt the same exact injury that happened the year before, and I heard a whisper, and it was crystal clear, and it was a whisper that said, "You're finished." And for me, I try to be as obedient as I possibly can to God, to the signs, to the universe, to the voices. And it was in the middle of all of this chaos and all of this commotion that I heard, "You're finished." And I was like, but God, this is our opportunity. Like, this is what we've been working on for, the past 20 plus years. He said, "You're finished." And so immediately after I got over the fear of, was that real? Because sometimes, you know, you hear a voice, you're like, that wasn't real, that was just me. That was just
Right,
me, I
that was
got it,
my
I got
head.
it, yeah, God,
Yeah.
no, God, no, that wasn't you. But it really was, and I felt like an ease, calming feeling over my entire body.